グランドファイナル優勝です。
AI の走りがすごいクレバーで、個人的に非常に楽しいレースでした。
想像以上に人間のプロの方たちが強かったと
これからもっと一緒にレースをしていきたいなっていうふうに思いましたね。
Welcome back to Race Together 2021. This is our second event of the Gran Turismo Sophy AI versus our GT Pro drivers. We're going to be getting into the action with 3 races to come a little bit later on here today. But first of all, let's catch up with some key people who've made this event happen.
速さという意味ではね、もう十分な速さを持っているグラントリスモソフィーなので、あとはどれくらいそのトップドライバーたちと何て言うんでしょうね、こう人間らしいバトルができるのか、そのあたりがポイントになってくるかなと思いますね。
And this is very important to us because we had a first event and we learned a lot from that event, and the team put a lot of time into improving the agents. And now we think we can, perform even better. And so today is a kind of like a measurement day. We want to know how we're doing. Hopefully what we'll see is an exciting race and we win. That is what we want to see.
So lots of exciting racing action to come for Race Together 2021 for our second event. We've got 4 pro drivers going up against the Gran Turismo Sophy AI system, which has been developed for this one. In terms of how they will line up on the grid, though, that's a 1v1 shootout. So we'll have 1 AI competitor and 1 GT top driver that will be nominated, and then they will go on a head-to-head qualifying system where they will do 1 lap, and then whoever sets the fastest lap means that basically if they qualify on pole position, that means that they will occupy the odd positions on the grid. Those who qualify in second will then occupy the even positions on the grid. Here are our 3 races. You can see here today we're going to be at the Dragon Trail Seaside for race 1 in N500 cars, Group 3 cars at the Lago Maggiore circuit in race 2, and then Group X cars for the grand final, the Red Bull X 2019 competition at the Circuit de la Sarthe, and you can see the point system there as well. 10 points for the winner and all the way down to 1 for 8th position, and you can see the grand final as well is double points, so it really does mean that it's going to be very exciting. Together 1, we had the GT Pro drivers who clawed it back right at the very end. They had a 2-point deficit going into the final race. However, in the grand final, they were able to turn things around.
7月でどこに課題があったのかというのをまずはレースを分析して、その一個一個なぜそういうことになったのかを見つつ、基本的にはでもトレーニングセットをいろいろ拡充して、もっといろんな状況への対応力を高めるために、いろんなシーンを用意して、あとは基本的には自立で学習するものなので、あとは本人に頑張らせる、そのための舞台をいろんなバリエーションを用意したっていう感じです。
前回よりもはるかに強くなっていると思うので、まずはその選手の方たちにそこをちょっと驚いてもらいたいなと思っていますし、かつ楽しいレースをしていただければなと思います。
Well, lots of developments for the GT Sophy AI. You can see our Gran Turismo top drivers. Takuma Miyazono, the 2020 triple champion in the FIA Gran Turismo Championships. Tomoaki Yamanaka, the 2021 Toyota GR-GT Cup champion.
今まで AI と対戦して全て今人間が勝ってきている状況で、毎回手強くなってきているので、今回こそやられるんじゃないかなっていう不安もあるんですけど、でも人間代表として、いいレースができるように頑張りたいと思います。
前回、勝つことはできたんですけど、本当に速さっていう部分では人間がもう圧倒的に劣っていて、本当になんとか勝てたっていうようなレースだったので、今回はもっとAI も成長していると思いますし、厳しい戦いになるとは思うんですけど、なんとか勝てればいいなというふうに思いますし、あと一番そうですね、いいバトルができればいいなというふうに思います。
前回のレースでは、人間側のそのレースでのチームワークっていうのがやっぱり強みとなって、勝つことはできたんですけど、今回のレースではAI もまたさらにもう速さもさらにつけてチームワークもつけてくるんじゃないかなというふうに考えているので、かなり厳しい戦いになるんじゃないかなとは思います。
まずクリーンであることを大前提として、それでいて熱いバトルができるような バトルレースができたらいいなと思っています。
So lots of revisions then to the Sony AI system since Race Together 2021, but this is going to be very exciting to see how our competitors are going to fare out on track here for Race Together 2021, our second event. You can see our stewards and the audience there all lined up, ready for some exciting action. Let's have a closer look though, shall we, at the first circuit we're going to be competing on. It's the Dragon Trail Seaside track. This is a fictional circuit within Gran Turismo Sport. Essentially, as you can see, it's a big triangle, 5.2 kilometers long. We've split it up into 3 sectors, and you can see here the different corners. Now, turns 2, turn 12, and turn 17 are expected to be our best overtaking opportunities here on this lap, so expect the AI and the GT Pro drivers to be going head-to-head there as well. And as you can see, the elevation change at this circuit, a total of 38 metres. Now, of course, we had a one-lap qualifier session for the drivers, and we had one AI going out as well as one of the GT Pro drivers as they were able to set their fastest lap time. And the question was, of course, who would be able to occupy pole position and therefore the odd spots, I should say, on the grid. Well, here we can see an onboard lap as we ride on board with Ryota Kokubun on the left-hand side, the 2019 World Tour winner in Tokyo, with Sophie Bordeaux, the GT AI system, as they come down on the brakes in towards turn 2. You can see Sophie there able to go a little bit later on the brakes, carry a bit more corner speed in, and already gaining a bit of time over Kokubun. Of course, the team at Sony AI and Polyphony Digital have been tailoring this system since we had our first event together. Very keen to see what the sector times are going to sit as we come through this hairpin bend there. Bordeaux looking like they're a little bit ahead as Kokubun gets a bit of a slide on, coming then out of that corner under the bridge for the first time. Those are the representative sector times as we come through. Kokubun gaining a bit of time then on the exit of that corner. Through into the S-bends we go. The car understeering wide. These, of course, only are N500 cars, so road cars effectively, therefore meaning that they are very tricky to drive on the limit. Not a lot of grip underneath them with the sports tyres that the drivers have. As we see on board here with Bordeaux, down in towards the hairpin, then this is turn 12. This is one of the overtaking opportunities that I was talking about, really clipping the inside there, using the inside of that curb to help get the car rotated. And as they come in towards these chicanes, this is very much one at a time through here, but it really does reward commitment as you come through these corners, through into the left, then the right. So easy it is to clip the wall on the outside if you just make a mistake coming through those series of corners. And Bordeaux looking like they are doing a fantastic job, as well as Kokubun. But let's see who is going to be the fastest as we come into turn 17, the last overtaking opportunity on this lap. Get the car rotated through that corner, back onto the power, use the curve on the outside, and let's see what the lap times then are going to be after that qualification session, because it's going to be pretty close between them, I reckon. As they come over the timing line, you can see Ryota Kokubun there with a 1:47, but it was 4.6 tenths slower than Sophie Bordeaux. So it is the AI that will line up in the odd positions on the grid, with Kokubun and the GT Pro drivers all lining up in the even positions on the grid. So then, what is that going to mean for our drivers? Well, we're going to find out very, very shortly. Let's catch up with them.
前回はなんか本当に常識では考えられないような運転をしてたんですけど、今覗いた感じだとハンドリングの操作とかもなんか普通になんか人間が切るようなスタイルになってたので、そこが進化したのかな。
Well, fantastic then to acknowledge the fact that the AI has been evolving there from Ryota Kokubun. And he, of course, will line up on the front row of the grid. Well, I said the front row of the grid, they line up in the odd positions of the grid, but these drivers are now going to be competing to see who will line up where on the grid. So let's get ready then to go racing, shall we, for race 1 for Race Together 2021, our second event here today. It's the GT Sophy AI system versus our GT Pro drivers. Sophie Bordeaux with the quickest lap in qualifying lines up on pole position. On the front row of the grid alongside her, it is Ryota Kokubun then, who did set the second fastest lap time in that session. Sophie Violette heads row number 2. And alongside Violette, it is Tomoaki Yamanaka, the 2021 Toyota GR GT Cup champion. Sophie there in P5 on the grid. And alongside Sophie, it is Shitaru Ryu, the 20-year-old from Nakagawa. The final row of the grid is occupied by Sophie Noir in 7th position. then completing it, it is Takuma Miyazono, the 2020 triple champion. Let's see how these drivers then are going to fare. 4 laps here at the Dragon Trail Seaside Circuit. No pit stops for these drivers and competitors to be worrying about. Only a flat-out race from light to the checkered flag. And let's see what's going to happen then as we get Race Together 2021 Race 1 underway here then for our second event. It's Sophie Bordeaux who will lead the field over the timing line from Ryota Kokkoman, but who will be leading when the checkered flag falls in 4 laps time as we go racing then. So Bordeaux leads the field over the timing line, followed by Kokkoman and Violette. They're all darting into the slipstream to try and get a run on their fellow competitor. Only Bordeaux does not have the advantage then of that slipstream. Into the braking zone of turn 2 we go. It's a lunge from Kokkoman as he tries to go up the inside, but it's actually Sophie Violette who goes on the outside into turn 2. Very aggressive driving then from Violette and up into second position at the end of the first corner. So it's now the 2 GT AIs that are in the front 2 positions of Bordeaux ahead of Violette. Then it's Kokkoman and Yamanaka, the 2 GT Pro drivers. Sophie Ver occupying 5th position. And then the remaining 2 GT Pro drivers of Shitari Ryu and Takuma Miyazono in 6th and 7th place then respectively as we come down in towards those S-bends then for the first time, flicking it through into there. Kokkoman, of course, as we heard earlier on, commenting on the evolution of the AI in qualifying, saying that the team at Sony AI have done a fantastic job. You can see Shitari Ryu there not doing a brilliant job of negotiating the exit of that corner as he just got it a little bit wide and onto the gravel, and it looks in the background there like Takuma Miyazono is being biffed sideways there by Sophie Noir. Not quite sure what that was all about. Shitari Ryu's off into the barrier. Was there a punt from a driver behind? Not quite sure. We'll see whether the stewards are going to be investigating it. On board here we ride with Tomoaki Yamanaka as we come through these S-bends then, and Sophie Ver looking like they're going to try and make a move coming into these series of corners. You can't go through at that chicane, but certainly at the exit of the corner and on the run down in towards turn 17, could an opportunity present itself then here for Ver? Well, going defensive then is Yamanaka. Ver goes towards the outside. This is getting pretty close between them as they run side by side into turn 17. Yamanaka holds firm in the inside line, and Ver is not able to get themselves past them and through and up into 4th position for the time being. So over the timeline we go. This is where the slipstream though of course will help Sophie Ver as they come down towards turn 1 and then into the braking zone of turn 2. You can see the lift off the throttle there for Ver is just don't want to get too close behind coming through those series of corners. Big old bit of opposite lock as we come down the inside. Miyazono's trying to go through there as well, but not close enough. Ver goes through on Tomoaki Yamanaka though for P4, so aggressive and robust driving from the AI then as they move themselves up a position. Sophie Ver going into 4th place. Yamanaka now relegated down into P5 and possibly 6th place as well if Takuma Miyazono has got anything to say about that. So down the hill we go and in towards those ever-tightening S-bends. Bordeaux versus Violette getting really close to one another into those S-bends there. Violette just biting off a bit more than they can chew, thinking they've got a little bit more grip underneath them than perhaps they do, and understeering a little bit wide there as well as they come through the exit of the corners. One of the things I noted in the first event that we had of Race Together 2021 was just how much they were riding the curb on the outside of this corner. Seems to have been sorted now by the team at Sony AI, and they're just taking a much more natural sort of racing driver, real-world-esque line coming into that corner, because if you tried to ride it on the curb in real life, then you'd be on a one-way ticket to the barrier. Meanwhile, Takuma Miyazono has lost the position there to Sophie Noir. Now here we can see, this is Yamanaka versus Sophie Ver coming on the exit of the corner. This is what happened on the earlier on in the lap, as you can see. Yamanaka then versus Sophie Ver. Collision with another car there for those 2 drivers, and they're under investigation as a result of that then as well. So we'll keep an eye out and see whether the stewards deem that to be a bit of a nasty overtake and whether we'll get any penalties issued before the end of that race. We saw that in our first event earlier on this year, and now we might see it again here for the second Race Together 2021 event. On board we ride then here with Sophie Violette trying to make a move on Sophie Bordeaux through turn 1. They've got the advantage. Warning for Sophie Noir then, so the AI getting a warning just to cool things down a little bit. A bit too aggressive in the early stages. So just keep an eye on that, because any more moves being made like that, and that is when we will see penalties being issued to our drivers. So here we are looking at Tomoaki Yamanaka. Now what's this all about as they go through the chicane? Is this a clip of the barrier or then on the inside? It certainly was. Clipped the barrier on the inside, chucked it to the wall on the outside, round and round like a tabletop, and right down towards 7th position there for Yamanaka, sadly. You See Bordeaux, meanwhile, at the front of this race, coming under all sorts of increasing pressure from Sophie Violette then, as they come through these S-bends once more, over the crest of the hill they're about to come, and on the run down in towards turn 12. This is one of the prime overtaking opportunities on this lap, but it's a good exit for the race leader of Bordeaux coming out of that corner, and as such, an opportunity does not present itself on this occasion for Sophie Violette as they come in towards that hairpin bend. Maybe just thinking about where they're going to pounce before the end of this race. Just over one lap now remains here at this Dragon Trail Seaside Circuit. Through into those tight chicane bends we go. That's where we saw Yamanaka making a bit of a hash of it last time around. As a result, he now sits down in 7th place. Through the tunnel we go, again very close to the wall on the outside. Violette, they're just lifting off the throttle ever so slightly. Bit of dust being kicked up by Bordeaux under the braking zone. Does that cost them a bit of time on the entry? It certainly does. Cost them to run wide and miss the apex by half a metre or so, I should say. And now Violette's got a good run as they come on towards the start-finish straight. Has to dart back though into the slipstream as we start the final lap of race 1 for Race Together then. And it's Bordeaux versus Violette, the two GT Sophy AI systems then battling for the race lead. Bordeaux into the lead, Violette in 2nd place, holding firm and not making any moves stick as it stands so far. But let's see whether Violette is able to get close enough on the exit of the corner, maybe out of turn 11 and on the run down in towards turn 12. That could be the opportunity that Violette is looking for to try and get themselves up into a top position then in this race. This is Takuma Miyazono meanwhile versus Sophie Noir. Noir of course had a penalty earlier on in this race. What's this all about down in towards turn 17? A big old late lunge, just about making the apex, a little bit wide going through there. Miyazono gets it a bit sideways, but either way it's Sophie Noir now up into P5. And as such, the GT Pro AI drivers are sitting very pretty in this race, all of them inside the top 5 as we ride on board here with Sophie Vere then, who is in 4th place, chasing down Cockburn for P3. One wonders whether he's going to be able to make that move stick before the end of this race, because we've only got half a lap or so left to go then here at the Dragon Trail Seaside Circuit. On the brakes we go in towards turn 12. So much corner speed the AI are able to carry into those corners. And as such, it just allows them to close up, but unfortunately with that they lose time on the exit then of the corners, which is where our human drivers, our GT Pro drivers, are just so much more refined, as it were, just getting the better exit, better traction out of those corners. And as such, they're not able to make any moves as we come down in towards the final corner then of turn number 17. This is the battle for 3rd place as we cross back to the battle for the lead. Very close there for Sophie Violette to get onto the back and get into the lead, but not quite close enough as the checkered flag flies for race 1. It's Sophie Bordeaux who wins race 1 from Sophie Violette. Then it is Ryota Cockburn who comes over the timing line in 3rd place ahead of Sophie Vere in P4. Very close between those two, just 0.2 of a second. Sophie Noir occupying 5th place ahead of Miyazono, Tomoaki, Yamanaka and Shitaru Ryu, the last of the pro drivers, some 5.9 seconds off the back of Yamanaka. A very disappointing end to the race for 3 of our pro drivers, only one of them getting themselves on to the podium positions. A very exciting race there, great stuff. You see COO Michael Sprunger of Sony AI just congratulating our commentators as well as some of the development team here at Sony AI as well. You can see the fastest lap there was occupied by Sophie Noir in that race, but it is Sophie Bordeaux and the AI drivers who take first blood then in that race. Very impressive stuff from all involved, and those are the point standings. You can see the AI has a 27-point total ahead of just 12 for the GT drivers. Of course, double points then for the grand final, just to remind you, but they're really going to have to pull their fingers out, the GT Pro drivers, to claw that back.
以前まではどっちかっていうと躊躇しない感じでスパンって入ってくるところをやっぱり行く行かないをギリギリまで迷って最後にこう刺しに来るっていうところはちょっと人間っぽくなったかなっていうような印象はあります。
これ以上奥深くブレーキ踏んだら止まれないだろうと思ったところでAI に外からスッとブレーキングで抜かれてしまったので、やっぱ AI は本当になんか止まれるギリギリの場所を知ってるんだなっていう感じで驚きました。
前は自分たち同士で戦って遅くなっちゃってたの。それで後ろに追いつかれ。でも今回1位と2位は2人ともこう綺麗に速く走り続けていったんで、そこがやっぱり前回と比べて随分成長した部分ですね。
Well, so then after an enthralling race 1, let's shift our focus then over to race 2. The Lago Maggiore circuit is the venue. And this is what we're going to be competing at, a fictional track within GT Sport based in the north of Italy. You can see there it is 5.8 kilometres long, and it's a bit of a roller coaster, this one. Lots of undulation to consider. We break it up into 4 sectors. You can see turn 1 being a pro member taking opportunity, as well as turn 11 at the end of the back straight. Turn 5 possibly, if you're brave enough there as well, just something to consider. You can see the elevation here, a grand total of 78 metres, 74 metres I should say, from the top to the bottom of the circuit. It's going to be interesting to see how our drivers and our AI are going to fare then at this second race for the second event of Race Together 2021. Here are the drivers just getting their practice in. And let's see what it's going to mean for qualifying. Of course, we had Cockburn versus the AI in the first race. What's it going to be like in race number 2? Well, we're about to find out very shortly. Here is Yamanaka and Sophie Rouge, who's on the right-hand side of your screen. This is down in towards the first corner, a 90-degree left-hander as they come, flick it into the right. You can really ride the curb then on the inside of that corner, a bit sideways then for Yamanaka on the exit of the corner, but certainly looking like the quicker of the two drivers in the early stages of this qualifying session. This qualifying lap, I should say, but Rouge there taking some more curb on the inside and getting a massive chunk of time as they come down the hill and then flick it in towards this right-hander. This is a decreasing radius right-hander, so you've got to scrub a bit of speed off as you go through whilst you're putting a lot of lateral load through the front tyres. Very easy, therefore, for the car to understeer, so you want to have a bit more of a rearward biased braking setup going through those corners. Over to the right-hand side, flick it into the left and pray that the front end sticks through there. Sophie Rouge now getting a clear advantage in this middle sector of the lap ahead of Tomoaki Yamanaka. Under the bridge they go, flicking it up through the rise and then on the run over the crest of the hill and down towards the roller coaster to turn 11. This is, again, one of the prime overtaking opportunities of the lap. Down the hill we go, flick it into that right-hander, and again, hope the front end sticks. Use the camber of the corner there as well, and the curb on the inside. Yamanaka being a bit cautious going through there. Rouge, meanwhile, our AI driver, being a bit more aggressive going through those series of corners, flicking it through into the right-hander then, and then on the run down in towards the final sector of this lap, in towards that right-hander once again. Nice tight line on the inside there, and it's a double apex right-hander effectively, so you've got to get the car rotated pretty soon. You don't want to run it out too wide, otherwise you'll be costing yourself a bit of time. Over the crest we go, down in towards the left-hander. Again, a lot of lateral load going through the front series of tyres as they come towards the timing line, and it's easily going to be pole position for the AI once again for race 2 here. But what is the deficit between them and Tomoaki Yamanaka? Well, it's quite a commanding one actually, 1.5 seconds there and thereabouts from our AI to our GT Pro drivers. So it is the AI that once again lines up on pole position for this second race ahead of our Gran Turismo Pro drivers. Let's see how this is all going to play out. The GT Pro drivers, of course, have a big old points deficit compared to our AI system, so keen to see how this is all going to play out for them, and let's hope that they can make the moves early doors. If you remember in the first Race Together event we had, it was all about making the moves early on in the race so the AI didn't scarper away. Here is Sophie Rouge then starting on pole position with Tomoaki Yamanaka lining up alongside her on the front row of the grid. Row number 2 is headed by Sophie Lavon. Then next up it is Tokuma Miyazono. Let's see what the Japanese driver is going to be able to do. Sophie Emerald lines up P5 on the grid in the bright green machine. Next up it is Ryota Cockburn in P6. The final row of the grid is occupied by Sophie Grease, who was very aggressive in the first race actually and picked up a few penalties in the grand final of our first event, as Chitari Ryu then completing the grid. So that is our grid then for 6 laps here at the Autodromo Lago Maggiore circuit. Let's see what is going to happen then for our drivers as we get ready to get racing underway. Once again, a rolling start down towards that 90-degree left-hander of turn 1. It's a prime overtaking opportunity, and this might be one of the only opportunities for our pro drivers to get through because the field is all bunched up, of course. So let's see what happens then. Race 2 of Race Together 2021. We go green and we go racing. Sophie Rouge leads the field across the line as we come down in towards the braking zone of turn number 1. Are any moves going to be made? They certainly are. Looks like Sophie Grease there was trying to go up the inside. Didn't quite make it stick, going a little bit wide, and a spin there as the first corner incident means that Takuma Miyazono is now facing the wrong way and right at the back of the field. As Shotaro Ryu has made a bit of ground in the early stages and has now inherited P5 from starting last on the grid in P8, but it's Sophie Rouge then that leads the way from Tomoaki Yamanaka. Sophie Lavande in P3, and a penalty then being awarded to Sophie Grease. That'll be presumably for the first corner contact that we witnessed there for Takuma Miyazono. So a disaster of a start once again for two of our pro drivers, Ryota Kokubun and Takuma Miyazono, facing the wrong way and right down the order in 7th and 8th position then respectively. So a tall order for our pro drivers to try and turn this around from our GT Sophy AI then. On board we ride here with Lavande, through the left-hander then through the right on the run in towards that corner we go, the infamous roller coaster. Now we can see here Yamanaka taking a defensive line. Is Lavande going to try and attack as they come down in towards the hairpin? Not quite close enough, I don't think, because he's going to have to go the long way around the outside then. Yamanaka defending the inside line, and that's what I was talking about earlier on. The evolution of the AI has just been super impressive. Let's have another look though at that first corner incident. So we're on board here with Sophie Grease. I think they go into Kokubun, who then, yeah, exactly, into Kokubun, just playing skittles then really, into the side of Miyazono then as well, just the concertina effect happening. And you can see it caused chaos at turn 2, and a 7-second penalty there for Sophie Emerald then, as well as Sophie Grease for causing that contact. Oh dear, well that is not good for our AI. It is good though for our GT Pro drivers. They'll be grinning from ear to ear, because that is a very welcome sight and could be potentially the relief that they need to be able to get themselves back up into the higher points paying positions. Onto the brakes we go, late on the brakes again from Sophie Grease. That's aggressive, too aggressive. And I think the stewards are going to be looking at that one once again. Another half-second penalty then for Grease for track limits then on that first lap. But the AI not performing as well as we were expecting. We were talking to Kokubun and Yamanaka after that first race, and they were praising the AI, saying how they just seemed a bit more calculated. They weren't diving at every opportunity, but seemingly they seem to be making a bit of a hash of it, and likewise there as well, because you can see them slowing down but not pulling off of the racing line. That's just good racing etiquette. Not a lot of sportsmanship involved here so far, and you can see that cost drivers time as well, because they have to get out of the way. Here's Yamanaka versus Sophie Lavande. Let's see what this is all about as they come up the inside. And again, more contact there from the AI, pushing Yamanaka wide. Lavande up into P2, but it's really, really aggressive stuff. I dare say the drivers are not going to be too happy with that, and certainly the stewards after this one as well. So certainly some evolution to be done with our Sophy AI system, it would appear. No such dramas though for Sophie Rouge, the lead AI car that is out in front in this race. They've got a 1.6 second advantage over Sophie Lavande. Tomoaki Yamanaka sitting in P3 currently then, with Shotaro Ryu inheriting P4 as a result of Grease and Emerald's penalties that they served after their first lap dramas. Here's Kokubun on the recovery after his dramas on the first corner. Let's see how quickly he's going to be able to depose Sophie Emerald of 6th place then. So through the right-hander they go, then flicking it into the left. Very, very steady on the throttle, but not quite steady enough there for Kokubun, just costing him a bit of time as he gets a bit of oversteer on the exit of the corners. Through the long left-hander we go, onto the curb on the outside and under the bridge to start the halfway point of this race, lap number 3. A penalty being picked up there for Kokubun. Not sure whether that's for track limits or maybe there's been some contact that we haven't quite witnessed, but you can see that indicated with the red flashing dot to the left of Kokubun's picture, and you can see there are half-second penalties, so that must be then for track limits for Kokubun, and that's a shame there for him because he was doing really well to close down that gap to Sophie Emerald, and as such now more work for him to do. Here there is Sophie Rouge not able to increase that advantage, 1.6 seconds it sits at between themselves and Sophie Lavande then, who sits in 2nd position with those aggressive and robust overtakes that we saw in that first few stages of the race, the first couple of laps of this race. It was all getting pretty elbows out, pretty feisty for these positions, and I wonder whether Lavande is going to be able to close down onto the back of Rouge before this race reaches its conclusion. So over the crest of the hill we go, down in towards the hairpin bend of turn number 11, and in towards that final sector of the lap. Down in towards that right-hander we go. Use that curb on the inside, as I mentioned earlier on when we watched the onboard qualification laps. And then in towards this final series of corners. It starts to get a lot tighter towards the exit of this circuit, relative, of course, to that of the middle sector, where it's a lot more faster and flowing, so to speak. Beautiful circuit, though. The team at Polyphony Digital have done a fantastic job of putting this circuit together, and it really is favoured very highly amongst our FIA Gran Turismo Championship competitors, and amongst those who just play GT Sport casually as well. On board we ride here with Sophie Grease. This is 5th position that they sit in currently then. 7/10 of a second back off of Shitaru Ryu and Tomoaki Yamanaka, who's just 1/10 of a second down the road. That could be a position ready to change hands before too long, because Ryu looked like he was going to try and have a bit of a sneaky look on Yamanaka coming in towards the first corner, but he wasn't quite able to launch his way into 3rd position and onto the final spot on the podium. Of course, they don't want to be battling too hard, because if they start battling amongst one another, it might allow that opportunity that Sophie Grease is looking for to get themselves back in front and into P4. But I say that, and a penalty has been awarded there for Grease. We haven't seen what that's all about. Don't think it's contact, so presumably must be down to track limit, and a half-second penalty indicates that my judgment was correct on that one, and as such, Grease then with a half-second penalty. More hard work for them to do before the end then of this race, and that is also going to allow Sophie Emerald, who sits in 6th position at the moment, to close up incrementally onto the back of them, because as I mentioned in Race Together 1, when we had that earlier on in the year, it's not just about losing the time in the penalty for the 1 second or however long it may be that you serve it. It's also crucially about the time that you lose after the penalty, because your car's going that much slower than those around you. You could lose another half a second, possibly a second, or Grease with a late lunge up the inside and pushing Ryu onto the gravel then. So I'm not sure what to think about that. The AI here are really getting their elbows out, but I think there might be a bit more refinement to do. And you can see the stewards agree with that as well. Illegal blocking and contact as well for Grease versus Shitaru Ryu. And Grease then will surely be hit with a penalty for that very robust overtake, because it's not cost Ryu 1 position, it's cost him 2, as Emerald has managed to inherit 5th place then as well. Ryu now down into 6th place, so it's the same story basically as race 1. We had 1 pro driver on the podium, which of course was Cockerman in race 1. Now sits Yamanaka, and then the pro driver sitting down in the last 3 positions, so it's not been a good day at all. And that podium position could be under threat here for Yamanaka as well, as Grease gets very close into the braking zone, pulls out of the slipstream in towards turn 1, bit late on the brakes, but covers the inside line in towards turn 2. Up the inside they go. An incident under investigation for Sophie Grease has resulted in a penalty then for illegal blocking. They've got that penalty, the half-second one to serve already, and it's awarding them for that second incident for illegal blocking, I should say, as I correct myself. But coming into that penalty zone then we are here for Grease. That's going to allow Yamanaka surely to go ahead. Where's Grease going to go? Just nowhere there for Yamanaka to go, not moving off the racing line there quick enough, and as such he had to dip himself out of the throttle there, and that cost him a bit of time. Just a bit messy, really, more than anything at this stage. But bear in mind, of course, this Sony AI system is very much in its primitive years, and it's very much a new bit of technology that needs to be refined, and that's the whole point of us being able to have these human versus AI races, is it gives us a better understanding of what the future can hold. And I tell you what, if we've got AI that are able to match 4 of the world's best Gran Turismo drivers, and I dare say that we're in good hands in the future. You can see here though that Yamanaka is coming under threat once again from Sophie Grease as they come in towards the hairpin bend of turn 11. Switch back on the exit then for Grease. Are they going to get the overspeed on the outside of the corner? Yamanaka is going to have the inside line as they flick it into the left-hander and holds firm for 3rd place for the time being though. But Grease is not backing down. They're really trying to find their way through. They're going to flick it into a right-hander. Yamanaka knows that, takes the defensive line into the braking zone, holds the line and holds the apex, doesn't allow an opportunity then for Grease to find her way past as it stands, but maybe into the next corner. That's an aggressive and robust move once again from Sophie Grease. Bit of contact as they go through into the left-handers, got the overspeed then as they run side by side down the hill and in towards the next left that follows. Yamanaka's got the inside line, Grease is on the outside. Sophie Emerald's ready to join the party as well, as it's now going to be 3 drivers battling for the final podium position here, and from attacking for 3rd place, it's now defending from 5th place then for Sophie Grease. late on the brakes. They go into the first corner once again. Emerald right up the rear wing of Sophie Grease for 4th place then here as well. And this is getting very exciting as we sit now on the start of the final lap for race 2 of Race Together. Takuma Miyazono, meanwhile, has picked up a penalty down there in 8th place. Not good at all for the triple champion of 2020. And sadly, it's not been a good race for him. Or a good event for him so far. As you can see, Sophie Emerald there picking up a half-second penalty, and that's going to cost her time. That penalty will either be served at the next penalty zone, or it will be served post-race. It will be awarded after the race has reached its conclusion. That depends on when she got the penalty and when it is going to be served. So let's see what happens then for Sophie Emerald as they come down the crest of the hill then in towards the middle sector of the lap for the final time. Yamanaka just having a bit of a cushion now in front of him. 0.3 of a second he has over Sophie Grease, but of course Grease has got the advantage of the slipstream, and likewise Emerald behind has got the advantage of the double slipstream. Now this is one of the best overtaking opportunities on the lap, on the run down in towards turn 11. Yamanaka knows that, once again holds his favourite defensive line as they come in towards the braking zone. Grease is all out of shape on the brakes there. That allows Emerald to come up the inside and through into 4th place. So Sophie Emerald goes through into P4, but unless she can get a half-second advantage over Grease, that's going to be 5th once the checkered flag begins to fall as we come in towards the final series of corners. But can Emerald get the better then of Yamanaka going for the move on the outside? Then Grease tries to follow them through as well. Not quite close enough as Grease tries to make a move coming through the next series of corners, but it's nose to tail between 3rd, 4th and 5th place as Sophie Rouge comes across the line to win race 2 of Race Together from Sophie Lavande in 2nd place. Tomoaki Yamanaka is just going to hold on for 3rd place. Emerald is going to finish 4th on the road but lose out to Grease once that penalty has been applied. So it'll be 5th place then for Sophie Emerald, 4th place for Sophie Grease just in front. Ryu comes home in 6th place, 7th for Cockburn, Takuma Miyazono then in 8th. But once again it is the AI that trounce the GT Pro drivers at the end of race 2 for Race Together 2021. The drivers and the commentary team congratulating one another after that one. And there are the final race results, as you can see on your screen as we stand. And that's how it sits after that 2nd race. What does that mean, though, for the point standings? Well, it's a commanding advantage over half again for GT Sophy. They've got 54 points compared to the GT drivers, just 24. So they need to hope that they have the race of their lives to the GT Pro drivers after that one in order to be able to get themselves into a prime position. Let's hear from the competitors, though, after that one.
とりあえずもうやることをやるしかないと思って、もう前はどう頑張ったって追いつかないので、だからもうやるとしたらもう後ろを見て、ちょうど AI 同士も争ってたので、もしかしたら真ん中の AI ももしかしたらちょっと後ろ気にしながら走るかなっていうのも、あって頭に入れながら走ってたんですけど、でも追いついてくるスピードが速すぎて、その後ろの AI がバトルしてる間に逃げられるっていうこともできなくて、すごい辛いレースになりましたね。
前回の時の方が正直まだなんですかね、バトルやりやすいというか、もう少しこう抑えてくれてたんですよ、ソフィーの方が。今回はちょっともう抜けにかかるとイケイケで来られちゃうんで、ちょっとどうしようもできないなっていう。なんとか最後ぐらいはそうですね、ちょっと人間の意地を見せて、そうですね、1位取れればいいかなと思います。
レース3はスリップストリームって言って車の後ろについて空気抵抗を減らす技があるんですけど、それが結構鍵になってくるレースなので、その点 AI はどういうふうに動いてくるかなっていうふうなのが結構興味深いなと思います。
So here we are then, ready to go for the grand final. It's at the Circuit de la Sarthe in the Group X cars, the Red Bull X2019s. These, of course, are favourites amongst our GT Pro drivers. You can see this Circuit de la Sarthe. I'm sure you'll recognise it if you're a fan of motor racing, otherwise known as Le Mans to you and me. Infamous corners, of course, including Tetra Rouge, the Mulsanne corner, Indianapolis, the Porsche curves, the Dunlop corner. You could name all of them, really, couldn't you? But the big Mulsanne straight is going to be the prime overtaking opportunity, of course, with that long straight, the advantage to slipstream. You can see 37.3 metres of elevation from the top to the bottom of the circuit. And the drivers competing over the course of that one-lap qualifying once again for this race. A 12-minute, I should say, qualifying session then for our drivers. AI once again versus the GT Pro drivers. And it looks like it's going to be Takuma Miyazono, I should say, the driver who will be the man who tries to depose Sophy Orange. So this is on the run down towards that Dunlop chicane into the heavy braking zone of that left-hander. Lots of entry speed then from Sophy Orange as they come on the exit of that curve. Got to be really careful because, of course, these are high downforce cars, and as such, if you're a bit too heavy with the throttle, then when you've not got the air flowing underneath the car, it can cause them to slide quite violently and quite snappily. You can see they're an advantage already for Sophy Orange as they come down the Mulsanne straight, and let's see what this is going to be like in terms of a lap time then between Sophy Orange and Takuma Miyazono. So Sleek keeping it over to the right hand side there for the AI, whereas Miyazono keeping it very much towards the centre, if not towards the left hand side of the circuit, which Orange is going to have to do because of course they're going to come in towards that braking zone of the first chicane, which they dart over to now. Where do you brake and pick your braking points on that Mulsanne straight? It's actually a public road, believe it or not, so you can drive along it when they've not got motor racing there. Big old slide meanwhile for Takuma Miyazono on the exit of the first chicane. That's going to cost him a bit of time, and of course he's going to carry that all the way down towards that next chicane, so not ideal at all there for Takuma Miyazono. If there's one thing you can do in a race car, it's get a good exit out of the corners, good drive out of those corners, because you'll lose a lot more time than you'll gain by carrying more speed into the corners and getting a slower exit out than you would if it was the other way around. And again, Takuma Miyazono just looking a bit scruffy there, and already you can see that Orange is quite significantly ahead as she comes down now in towards the second part of the Mulsanne straight, and then of course in towards that Mulsanne corner where the circuit tightens up quite significantly. Again, another prime overtaking opportunity on this lap. In towards the Mulsanne corner we go, straight lining it there for Orange into the braking zone, into the right-hander. Miyazono a bit more tentative into that corner, gets a nice exit though coming out of that, and on the run down towards Indianapolis. That'll be a welcome sight there for the 2020 triple champion. Under the bridge of the hill though we go already for Sophy Orange, so quite a significant advantage, and of course it's such a long lap here at Le Mans as well. It's crucial to mention that we're not looking for tenths of a second to split these drivers. It's going to be seconds, if not 3, 4, 5, 6 seconds perhaps, separating them at the checkered flag. In towards Indianapolis we go then into our nage. This is the right-hander, one of the final overtaking opportunities on the lap, really, a tight right-hander, which leads then into the Porsche curves. I said in the first event we had for Race Together 2021 that if you're leading coming out of here, you're pretty much guaranteed to be leading at the checkered flag, and of course that proved to be 100% wrong once the AI decided to get their elbows out at the end of this race. So then through into the Porsche curves we go. Orange with a comfortable advantage over Miyazono, then flicking it through that left-hander, nice and controlled, nice and calm and smooth. And then just a couple of corners left with the 4 chicanes ready for our drivers to follow. Over the left-hand side we go, then flick it over to the right-hand side of the circuit, missed the pit exit there. And using the pit exit actually is the braking zone there for Sophy Orange, so really gaining loads of time in those final series of corners, and that is reflected in the lap time, which is set as well, a 3:13 flat for Sophy Orange, whereas it's a 3:16 for Takuma Miyazono. 3.5 seconds the difference separating those two drivers.
いや早いですね。早かった。はい。
Well then, we're about ready to go racing. Let's see what is going to happen in our grand final for Race Together 2021. The competitors then all lined up and ready, the awards ready for afterwards as well. I'm very excited to see how this is all going to play out, with of course a big deficit for the GT Pro drivers to make up. And this is how the grid lines up. Sophy Orange lines up on pole position. Takuma Miyazono alongside her on the front row of the grid. Next up on the second row and heading it, you can see it's Sophie Blur then. And then next up we have our following Japanese contingents there. The remainder of the field lining up on the grid. Keen to see how they're all going to fare. Of course, a standing start for our drivers here as well. Will make things a little bit tricky putting this amount of horsepower down. And the final competitors lined up then on the grid. Let's see what is going to happen as we get ready then to go for lights out. So Orange on pole position, Takuma Miyazono alongside Blur and Yamanaka on row number 2. 7 laps here at Le Mans. Who's going to claim the checkered flag and the overall win for Race Together 2021 for our second event? Let's see what happens then as the revs rise and we get ready to go for the start. Lights out and we're racing. Good start then from Takuma Miyazono. Sophy Orange immediately darts over to try and hold the charge then of Miyazono. Look at Blur then trying to attack on Yamanaka, who's managed to inherit third place in as they come towards the braking zone of turn number 2. This is a prime overtaking opportunity, and there's contact there between Miyazono and Sophie Orange. That means that Yamanaka is now out in front versus Miyazono, and he's ahead is Yamanaka from his compatriot then. So Yamanaka in front from Miyazono, now from Sophie Jean, who sits up in third place, from Sophie Blur, who was in P3 on the grid, if I remind you as well. So now from pole position to right at the back of the field for Sophie Orange, from first to last place. And now we can see here Jean trying to attack immediately on Takuma Miyazono then. So down the Mulsanne straight we go for the first time, and you can see there in the background Sophie Blur versus Ryota Kokkoman as well. Keep an eye out on that for fourth place as Jean gets herself up into second position then. Let's see whether Miyazono is able to retaliate into the braking zone of the chicane. Down the inside goes Miyazono, contact between the two. Very messy stuff there in the early stages as Miyazono gets his elbows out once again, and back through he goes regardless though, and up into second position for Takuma. Jean though immediately retaliates. Down the second part of the Mulsanne we go, and she's now up into second position, I should say, with Miyazono relegated down into P3. Kokkoman just losing out to Sophie Blur there momentarily as well for P4 as they come out of the chicane then, and on the run down in towards the Mulsanne corner once more. Sophie Blanche being given a penalty, presumably for track limits at these early stages, because we haven't seen that the incident is under investigation from the stewards. Let's have a look and see what that first corner then happens. So we're on board here with Takuma Miyazono. He, I think, just goes into the back of Sophie Orange. Orange moving aggressively under the brakes. Didn't really leave a lot of room there for Miyazono to go. Yamanaka had to take to the escape road then, got herself past Sophie Blur then as well. A warning being given to Miyazono. I think that's fair, to be honest with you, because, let's be honest, Miyazono didn't really have anywhere to go. As I said, moving under braking is a big no-no in motor racing, and that really just cost him so much. He now sits in second place, and that warning, I think, is a fair punishment for the crime. Meanwhile, further back, you can see Sophie Jean versus Sophie Blur for position. P3 versus P4. Kokkoman there ready to pick up the pieces in P5. That GT Pro driver, the 2019 World Tour winner from Tokyo. On the brakes and into Arnage we go, though, for the first time. And you can see that penalty there being served by Sophie Blanche in sixth place. Shitaru Ryu down in 8th position. Of course, he's not used to competing in the World Tour, so he might not have the same pace. You can see there in the background as well, it's getting really aggressive there. I think that was between Sophie Blanche and Sophie Orange, the two AIs just going head to head. We saw that aggressiveness in race 2, and it certainly seems to be repeating itself here in race number 3. So let's see how this is all going to work out for our drivers then, as they come through those Porsche curves then for the first time. Out of the Porsche curves and into the Ford chicane. Sophie Jean still ahead of Sophie Blur. That's the battle for third place that still reigns on. Half a second separating them as they come across the timing line to start then the second lap. Incident under investigation there between Takuma Miyazono and Sophie Jean. That, I think, was into the chicane after the Mulsanne straight. So let's keep an eye out and see how that changes hands. It might already be ready to change hands as they get very late and squirrely under the brakes there. Sophie Jean, you can see, not a lot of sportsmanship going on, it must be said, with these AI drivers at the moment. Of course, it's a very big technological exercise, this, for the Sony AI system, and it's very much a work in progress. Great to see them being able to fight, nonetheless, with these GT Pro competitors. But still, as you can still see there, a fair bit of work to try and do to turn these things around. Here, though, is Sophie Jean versus Takuma Miyazono as they come onto the Mulsanne out of Tetra Rouge. And is Miyazono going to lose that position, or a case of when Miyazono is going to lose that position? Pulling out of the slipstream and into second place we go for Sophie Jean then. So up into P2, it's Yamanaka from Sophie Jean, from Miyazono, from Sophie Blur then. But for how long, though, because Miyazono is trying to retaliate and trying to go back through into that first chicane. He wasn't quite close enough to make a move stick going through into there. Sophie Blur, meanwhile, sits in P4 as it stands, and is looking to try and attack that final podium spot that is now occupied by Takuma Miyazono. Shitaru Ryu, meanwhile, has been given a penalty down in 8th place. Again, we didn't see what that was for, so let's presume it's for track limits at this stage, so there'll be half a second or so for Shitaru Ryu to be able to serve, but he's already 13 seconds off the back of Sophie Orange. Second chicane we run through now then. On board here then with Sophie Jean as she looks back from Takuma Miyazono, and Sophie Blur and Kokkoman all battling amongst one another. Dust being kicked up there in the background as the very, very strong aerodynamics of this Red Bull X 2019 come to fruition. As you can see, this is where the car is at its most aerodynamic down these straights. Loads of air being compressed onto the car. Does make it very exciting for our drivers to be able to compete, of course, with that downforce. And I dread to think what the amount of downforce being pushed onto those cars at that sort of speed is, but it must be half a tonne, if not a tonne worth of weight, which is a big old amount of weight to be having underneath you, which makes these cars incredibly tricky to drive when you're going through the slower speed corners. You have to be very, very careful indeed. You can see here, though, meanwhile, this is Sophie Blur going for the attack on Cockburn as they come in towards Indianapolis. Cockburn goes to the defensive line to the left-hander, really close between themselves and Takuma Miyazono, who I think was caught napping just ever so slightly there. The positions stay as they are for now, but whilst they're squabbling, look who's in the background there. Blanche and Orange ready to join the party, though, so we could have 3 AI battling with 2 GT Pro drivers before too long. Let's see how this is all going to work out then as we come down in towards the Porsche curves. Blur goes towards the outside as Cockburn tries to defend his line, but the overspeed is too great for him to do so. Cockburn then relegated down to fifth place as Blur inherits 4th position there with a lovely timed move going into that corner. That's really the best overtaking opportunity you can make going into those Porsche curves, because you can't do it in the middle of the corners. It's so much more time through there, and a big old slide for Cockburn cost him time, and subsequently a position there to Sophie Blanche as well, and another 1 second penalty to boot there. So that's 3 places lost in the space of a handful of corners there for Cockburn. So from battling potentially for the podium positions, it's now battling for the final spots in this race. Miyazono and Blur are under investigation there as well, so that's a shame, and a penalty being given there for Sophie Blanche, Cockburn and Sophie Blur then as well. So let's see what that is all about as this race begins to pan out. There's a half-second penalty for Tomoaki Yamanaka to boot as well, so penalties galore. The stewards are keeping themselves busy, it's got to be said, over the course of this race. So on board we ride then here with Sophie John. This is going to be pretty easy for her to be able to get herself past Tomoaki Yamanaka, because you can see that Yamanaka, I say that, not making it very easy, trying to defend that line very robustly, but of course he's got that half-second penalty, and of course Jean has got the advantage of the slipstream, that hole being punched into the air in front of her. Side by side they run down this back straight, very close between them. Jean not giving in, likewise Yamanaka is not as well. There's contact between them as they come into the first chicane, over the bollard there for Jean, and running onto the curb on the exit and costing them huge amounts of time. A half-second penalty then being, a 1 second penalty I should say, being given to Tomoaki Yamanaka as I put the teeth back in, but the gap now between themselves and Sophie Jean sits at 2.2 seconds. And one wonders whether the steward's going to be having a look at that from Yamanaka, because there was definite contact, and as I say, that confirmation of that as well. A 2.1 second deficit between Yamanaka and Jean, and that is now under investigation, and I wonder whether Yamanaka will be slapped on the wrist or he'll be given something a bit stronger in the form of a penalty. So down the second part of the Mulsanne we go. You can see there in the background Sophie Orange, a warning being given there to Yamanaka. This is Sophie Blur into the braking zone. This is into the 4 chicane. Oh, a dive up the inside for Miyazono there, and onto the gravel on the outside as there was just no room for them. Miyazono then facing the wrong way as well, so his day goes from bad to worse, and Sophie Blur being hit with a 1.5 second penalty. I'm not surprised. You can't make a lunge like that. It's all about sportsmanship in this game. You've got to consider that it's in the spirit of fair play, and a 1 second penalty again being awarded to Sophie Blur. So Blur certainly in the wars in this race. And yes, as I said, all about the spirit of fair play. You've got to do things, as a wise man once said, that avoid making you look bad. And that's what this is all about. And this is, of course, a very big technological exercise for our teams at Sony AI and also Polyphony Digital to be able to integrate this within GT Sport. This is Sophie Blur ready to serve the penalty. Through Arnage they go, and into that penalty zone then. And then out on the run towards the Porsche curves. Miyazono gets ahead as that penalty is then served by Sophie Blur. And let's see what that's going to mean then for Blur, because she's been very aggressive then over the course of this race. Is it going to be another dive bomb up the inside for her going through into those final series of chicanes? You can't make a move stick through these Porsche curves, or can you? Because Blur is certainly trying to, but I just don't think it's going to work, and sensibly backing out of it right at the last moment there. But I have to say, this is mightily impressive to see these AI running, as I said, it's such close competition. Is it going to be the dive down the inside from Blur once again? Miyazono's wide, so that goes for the defensive line, leaves no room for Blur to find her way through. So learning from their last mistakes, these two are very old adversaries, and now Blur gets the better exit on the corner as Miyazono got a bit squirrely. There's contact between them as they come across the timing line to start lap 4 then here. Side by side they run as they come through the first corner and in towards the Dunlop curve. So Blur on the inside then. Miyazono's built later on the brakes though, and he's got 6th place back. 7th place it still sits for Sophie Blur. So very close competition between our GT Pro and GT AI drivers then here, and you can see the battle for the lead is ready to change hands once again as Sophie Jean now takes over from Tomoaki Yamanaka. That gap has been coming down incrementally over the last couple of laps or so, and it's now down to a very small deficit, but you can see Yamanaka's ready to try and retake that lead back as they come down in towards the first chicane. Very late on the brakes, they're about to go as they flick it into the left-hander. These two have come to blows into there, and you can see that Sophie Jean gets herself ahead, but runs it a bit wide on the entry of the corner. Yamanaka goes back through on the exit of the corner and up through into the race lead. So nice driving then from Yamanaka to get himself back into the race lead, but for how long? Because Jean and also Sophie Orange not too far adrift at all as they come down in towards the second chicane, then bagging wheel fairings as they come in towards that left-hander. It's Jean with the advantage as an incident involving Miyazono and Sophie Blur once again is under investigation, and we can see that Miyazono is now 3.4 seconds off the back of Shitaro Ryu. So I wonder whether there was another big bit of contact between Blur and Miyazono. Let's wait and see what the steward's seen and whether we'll get a replay of that one. Here comes Miyazono down the inside, Sophie Orange trying to have a little look, and Yamanaka, I should say, was trying to go through into the race lead, wasn't quite able to make that move stick going through into there. So the running order now sits with Sophie Jean ahead of Yamanaka, ahead of Sophie Orange then, so the top 3 drivers running bumper to bumper. And down the back straight they go in towards Indianapolis. Here comes Orange with the advance of the slipstream on Yamanaka. Backs out of the throttle at the last moment. It's getting very messy and very aggressive up front. You can see Jean there moving all over the place, try and hold on to the race lead. Does Yamanaka send it down the inside to the left-hander? He does. There's contact and Jean's off into the barrier. So there'll be a penalty there, surely awarded to Yamanaka. And speaking of penalties, Sophie Blur has been given a 5-second penalty for more contact with Takuma Miyazono, but it's Yamanaka, his compatriot, who now sits in the lead of this race, and an incident involving Jean and Yamanaka under investigation. Here is Sophie Orange ready to try and take over the lead at the front of this race. Side by side they run down in towards the Porsche curves, on the inside then for Orange, and goes through into the race lead. So lovely driving then from Orange, great respect from both of the competitors of the AI and Tomoaki Yamanaka, our GT Pro driver, as he goes through into second place, and Orange inherits the race lead and now already pulling out an advantage. Great action here as we get ready to start lap number 5 of race 3 for Race Together 2021. So a 5-second penalty then being awarded to Sophie Blur, drops her right down to 7th place. Still some 3 seconds behind Takuma Miyazono and Tomoaki Yamanaka being hit with a 5-second penalty. This is a disaster for the overall points haul for our GT Pro drivers, because that means that he is going to lose out certainly to Sophie Blanche here before the end of this lap, and that 5-second penalty is going to feel like an absolute lifetime for Yamanaka as well. And also Sophie Jean picking up a penalty. We haven't seen what that's all about, so let's assume that's for track limits, as we can't know at this stage what it's all about until we see an incident, if we do see the replay of it. Here comes Blanche going through on the slipstream, or trying to at least. Yamanaka once again with the very robust defending. He's allowed to do that because you're allowed to move once coming down these straights, but of course it's all immaterial for Yamanaka to defend here really, because Blanche is going to go through regardless, or at least try to, that's for sure. Coming in towards that penalty zone we go as we go into the first chicane. Yamanaka goes to the defensive line, there's contact once again. Yamanaka in the walls, Blanche into the wall, and I dare say the stewards are going to be having a bit of a look at that one again. But here is the 5-second penalty then served for Tomoaki Yamanaka. Sophie Blanche goes through and into second place, so it's the GT Sophie AI drivers of Orange and Blanche who sit in the top 2 positions then in this race. Yamanaka and Cockburn, the 2 GT Pro drivers, sitting in 3rd and 4th place. Those 2 have really been the class of the field so far here today, relative to those around them. In terms of the pro drivers at least, Shitaro Ryu's never really gotten going, and Miyazono has had his fair amount of misfortune then in these races. So an incident involving Sophie Blur for ignoring track limits is under investigation. Let's see how that all plays out then for Blur. Here's Cockburn, 1 second penalty for Ryota then. Ryota not having a good time of it so far out on track here. Every time he seems to have clawed his way back forwards, he's just been hit with a penalty or an incident or something that's happened that's really compounded those woes. And being 1.8 seconds, 1.9 seconds off the back of Yamanaka is going to feel like a fortnight anyway, with a further 1 to 1.5 seconds after he served that penalty. He's going to be well out of touching distance to be able to find his way through and possibly onto the final step of the podium before this race reaches its conclusion. There's Sophie Blur, another 5-second penalty for Blur, so less sportsmanship than we were seeing before, certainly in Race Together 1 earlier on this year. There's the 5-second penalty. It's board, and that's where Blur will serve hers. That's where the 1 second penalty is served for Cockburn. And down the back straight we go and in towards those Porsche curves then here for Cockburn. It's going to get very exciting to see if any of these drivers can close up. Sophie Blur's not too far away from Shitaru Ryu. We're right on board here with Sophie John. Because of all the penalties, of course, the field has spread out somewhat over the last couple of laps or so. We don't have such a tight race at the front. 6.3 seconds Sophie Orange has over Sophie Blanche. 4.2 seconds Blanche has over Yamanaka. 3.5 Yamanaka has over Cockburn. The closest battle, as I said, is between Ryu and Blur for 7th place in this race. I say that could be ready to try and change because Yamanaka's been hit with that penalty. So he comes over the timeline and has been hit with another penalty then. Not quite sure whether that's due to an earlier incident or whether it's just due to track limits. Sophie Jean, who we now ride on board with, has also picked up a penalty then as well. So that's not good for Jean because they were running in the lead, if you remember, earlier on in this race. And now, sadly, they're sitting in 5th place and set to lose time to Ryota Cockburn, so it won't be 4th unless a minor miracle happens. But we've had so many penalties in this race that I wouldn't be surprised at all. Meanwhile, Shitaru Ryu has been able to get himself ahead of Sophie Blur. Blur, I think, who was just overtaken coming in towards the Dunlop chicane. Now here we see on board here with Sophie Jean the advantage of the slipstream. You can see how much faster the closing speed is of that car in front to Ryota Cockburn. 320 kilometers an hour or so. That's about 190 or so miles an hour there and thereabouts. And here comes that penalty then for Sophie Jean, so a 2-second penalty for the yellow car, and that's not going to be good at all. But also in front, Sophie Blanche has a penalty, so that could be a possible welcome sight here for Cockburn, and indeed it is. So Cockburn then goes through into 4th place, but is he going to get 3rd from Yamanaka? Yes, he certainly is, so that's nice there for Cockburn. Gets 3rd place, and don't forget Blanche has already got to serve another penalty then as well. He's some 10 seconds off the back of Blanche, so he's going to have to hope for a minor miracle, or indeed a very long penalty, of which we don't know how long that penalty is for Blanche at the moment, but certainly he'll be very happy with that one. Now, what we need here from the GT Pro drivers of Cockburn and Yamanaka is for them both really to work together. They need to not be squabbling amongst one another. They need to put their differences aside for the rest of this race and just fight amongst themselves, work together, basically. Use the slipstream to your advantage and try and close that deficit down to the competitors in front, because all these points, and of course I remind you it is double points here for this grand final, are going to be very important for the points tally at the end of this race. It was a big advantage for the GT Sophy AI system before we went into this one. It could be even higher as Blur goes down the inside of Shitaru Ryu and gets herself up and splits the 2 pro drivers. So up ahead of Takuma Miyazono is Sophie Blur, and now the next target is Shitaru Ryu. So Blur then into 7th place, Miyazono relegated to the back of the field and down into 8th place. And the incident is under investigation there for collision and contact between the 2 of Miyazono and Sophie Blur. Here comes Blur on the inside of Ryu then. Into Indianapolis we go. It's a brave place to pass up the inside, but goes through into 6th place then. So great racing then from Sophie Blur. Let's see how this is all going to work out between these drivers. So Sophie Blur then been in the wars quite a lot in this race. They've had more penalties than I've had hot dinners, I have to say. They've been all over the shop in this one. And as I said, lots of refinement to be able to do in the Sony AI system before the end of this race. Another warning then being given to Sophie Blur. So the stewards are not going to be best pleased with this one. there is Sophie Jean, who sits in 5th place. They seem to have calmed down a little bit from using the pit entry as the run into those final through few chicanes there for the AI now, which is good news to see, actually. Very welcome sight. You can see in front there, Yamanaka versus Ryota Kokubun. So this is the run through the right-hander, and then on the brakes and in towards the Dunlop chicane we go. You can see the closing speed under braking there for Sophie Jean. We're on the final lap of action then here at the Circuit de la Sarthe, and this is a very closely fought battle between 3rd, 4th and 5th place. But I say that because Jean has picked up a half-second penalty, and that could be potentially very compromising. I don't think it'll drop her out of slipstream range, but certainly it will mean she won't be able to attack as early as she may have done. Let's see what happens then as we come in toward the Mulsanne straight. This is the best opportunity to attack because you've got a great amount of closing speed, and she's right close behind Ryota Kokubun, who of course is also having that hole punched in the air in front of him there as well. Miyazono has also picked up a penalty then on the start of this final lap. Down the back straight we go, down the Mulsanne, then in towards the first chicane. No way through there for Jean at the moment because of course that hole is being punched in the air for Kokubun. Oh, but a late lunge down the inside there for Jean. That caught me unawares. Up the inside she goes through into 4th place and into 3rd on the exit of the corner. So very robust driving there. 2 into 1 certainly does go, but it's all in vain, and the penalty there is contact as Yamanaka hits into the back of Jean. No room there for Yamanaka to move. That's exactly what I was talking about in the last race that we had. When you don't have any room to move out of the way, when they don't move out of the way quick enough, there's no room for the driver behind to move out of the way. So contact is inevitable in those circumstances, and it's robbed us of what would have been a fantastic battle for 3rd position. That's such a shame there for those drivers. Either way, it's a welcome sight for Kokubun and Yamanaka, who now sit with a bit more of an advantage over the 2 AI of Jean and Bleu in 3rd and 4th place for Kokubun and Yamanaka respectively. But it is easily going to be the day of the AI then here for Race Together, race number 3 between these drivers, because they had more than double the points of the GT Pro drivers going into this one. And to be fair to Sophie Orange, driven absolutely brilliantly this AI over the course of this race, and Sophie Blanche as well. They've kept their noses relatively out of trouble compared to some of their AI competitors. I'm thinking of you, Sophie Bleu, and Sophie Jean, to name just a couple. But they've kept their noses relatively clean and just driven a calm and commanding race and just steadily extended those gaps. So we ride on board then into the Porsche curbs for the final time. Flicking it through into that left hand, you can see using that wall on the outside as a guide. You want to be so careful and so smooth through here, feathering the throttle through those series of corners. Sophie Jean picking up another warning, so the steward's having to mark that down on the never-ending tally. I hope they've got a lot of paper up in the steward's office, but no such problems then for Sophie Orange. Through into the 4th chicane and across the timing line. We're about to go at the grand final for Race Together. It is Sophie Orange and the AI that wins race number 3, the grand final here at the Circuit de la Sarthe. It is Sophie Blanche, makes it an AI 1-2. GT Sophie AI is occupying the top 2 positions, and Ryota Kokubun is going to be the lead Gran Turismo Pro driver. The 2019 World Tour winner from Tokyo comes across the timing line to take 3rd place, and the podium for him. Tomoaki Yamanaka will come home in P4 at the end of that race. It's going to be Sophie Bleu who finishes just behind Sophie Jean for P6, then Shotaro Ryu and Takuma Miyazono finishing in P7 and P8 respectively. And by my calculations, given there's double points on offer, I'm fairly certain that the GT Sophie AI are going to have won this Race Together 2, which is of course is in a parallel to the GT Pro drivers who won the first event we had for Race Together 2021. Huge congratulations all round to our drivers, and huge congratulations to the Sony AI team and the Sophie AI competitors who were out on track here. There's your final confirmation of your results on your screen, as you can see. And this is what it means for the point standings. Easily double the points there for Sophie. 104 points to the GT drivers, 52 at the checkered flag. Fantastic driving from all involved and a great day's worth of racing. Let's catch up though with some of our competitors and the stars after that race.
前回よりもはるかに強くなってソフィーっていうのをしっかり見せれたのがまず安心しています。であともちろん勝ってたことも当然嬉しいですし、ただちょっとペナルティとかが多かった印象があるので、引き続きこれからもっともっといい AI を作っていこうというふうに思いました。
やっぱりこうとことん速く走るためにはこういう操作が必要なんだなっていったところは毎回学ばさせてもらってますし、例えばステアリングの切り方一つにしてもアクセルを踏んだりブレーキを踏んだりっていうその一つ一つの操作がやっぱり人間ではできないぐらい繊細な操作をしているので、ここまでしないと車って速く走らせられないんだなっていうところとか、そういったところは非常に参考になりました。
前回のAI のイベントと比べると非常に、ある程度クリーンな走りができたかなと思います。前に行きたいっていうその AI の気持ちと逆にその、人間らしその相手をリスペクトしてここは行かないみたいな、ここは行くみたいな、そこが3レース通して人間らしさを感じたかなと思います。
並んでコーナーに入るときに結構前だと AI はそのアウト側だったらもうアウトに吹っ飛んでいったりとか、イン側だったらもう自分をもう押し出してまで行ったりとか、そういう結構強引なだったり、コースアウトとかそういうのが多かったんですけど、今回はちゃんとその速度をキープしてアウトからかぶせてうまく抜いていく場面も見えたり、ただまたある場面では同じようにコースアウトしちゃったりっていうのがあって、少しずつ進化してきているような感じもしました。
やっぱり自分の思いつかないような走り方をそのソフィーがしているんですよ。本当に自分の想像できる限界をもう1段階も2段階も超えているような走りで、そういった意味で自分の定めていた限界っていうのが壊れて、何ですかね、もっともう一段階上を目指せるっていうことが、自分の中で認識できるんですよね。っていう意味で自分の走りのレベルっていうのは間違いなく一段階上がると思いますし、今回みたいにソフィーの走りを見て自分に生かしていくことができれば、今後もっと自分のレベルアップにつながるなっていうふうに思いました。はい。
Well, great that our drivers were able to learn some new techniques from the Sophy AI system, and here are some awards that were presented to the team behind Sony AI. And now we'll leave you with some closing thoughts from COO Michael Splunga and, of course, Yamauchi-san, the producer of Gran Turismo.
Oh, it's amazing. I mean, it was basically what we wanted. We had really great races with a lot of changes of positions. I think the humans fought very well, but we won, which is, of course, what I wanted also. For the team, and we also saw some really great performance of the cars on the different tracks, and we really saw a progress towards the first event that we had, right? So in these few months, actually, I think we've really improved a lot, and we've addressed some of the things very, very well that we wanted to address. So I think overall, it's an amazing result for us.
以前のレースに比べるとグランツリスモソフィーの動きがなんて言うんでしょうね、より滑らかになってより人間味が出てきて、でかつ速いっていう状態になったのでいいレースが見られたんじゃないかなと思います。いずれこの AI はグランツリスモに追加されると思うんですね。でおそらくそれをプレイヤーの皆さん全員が育てていくようなそういう存在になるんじゃないかなと思うんですね。最初からパーフェクトなものが登場するわけではなくて、人間と同じですよね。いろんな経験を積んで何が好ましい行動なのか、何が好ましくないのか、何が尊敬されるのか、何が尊敬されないのかみたいなことも含めて学習していく必要があって、それはやっぱりプレイヤーの皆さんの協力が必要なので、次のステップはそういうステップなんじゃないかなと思います。